Folks, I need a few governors to come in. But I'd like to start the meeting this afternoon by thanking President Hitt and all the people at the University of Central Florida for the wonderful hospitality we've had the last 3 days. You really went above and beyond, and we appreciate it. And I don't know if you want to say anything about how much fun it is to host us.
It's a slice of heaven, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, man. I love it when that liberal arts education comes out.
You help us feel unworthy.
All right, we ought to take a roll.
Chair Colson.
Here.
Vice Chair Hosseini. Here. Governor Beard.
Here.
Governor Carter.
Here.
Governor Caruncho.
Here.
Governor Frost. Governor Frost, are you on the phone?
You know, we need to email her, but she may not know that the time changed, if we could do that.
Governor Kuntz.
Present.
Governor Parker.
Present.
Governor Perez.
Here.
Commissioner Robinson. Governor Rude.
Here.
Governor Stavros. Governor Temple.
Here.
Governor Tripp.
Here.
Governor Webster. Here. Governor Whatley.
Here.
Here.
Governor Yost. Chair Colson, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The first thing I'd like to do is to introduce you all to and welcome our two new Board of Government members. They've been here the last 2 days, and you've heard from them and probably chatted with them. But Cortez Whatley is the current student body president here at University of Central Florida and is the first UCF student body president to serve as chairman of the Florida Student Association and a member of our board. He is pursuing a Bachelor of Arts with independent majors in legal studies and public administration and a minor in political science. Mr. Whatley plans on attending law school after completing his undergraduate degree. He's active in the city of Orlando, having clerked with local law firms and being a regular volunteer at the local YMCA coaching youth basketball. Welcome, Governor Whatley.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Elizabeth Webster was appointed last week and was and immediately was asked to go to work. She lives in Weston. And has been the regional vice president of health services for Arcadian Health Plan since 2008. Prior to that, she worked with both Cornerstone Hospital and Kindred Hospital. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the State University of New York Health Science Center and a Master's in Business Administration from the University of Miami. Welcome, Governor Whatley. Governor Webster. I want to thank the committees for all the work they've done over the last 2 days. In many ways, this is the most important meeting of the year because the actions we take on the university work plans establish the direction of not only the universities but also the system. I want to thank Governor Rude for his leadership in handling the Strategic Planning Committee for those 2 days. He did a great job. Today we will have the opportunity to take the unprecedented step of approving the goals that the universities have set for the next year, evidence of this board's willingness to shoulder its constitutional responsibility of defining the distinct mission of each university. We've had a lot going on between now and the last board meeting. You heard this morning from President Benz and Governor Beard about the Facilities Task Force and the Commission on and the work it's doing, and it expects to report back this fall. Last March, I told you all about the Commission on Florida Higher Education Access and Degree Attainment, which we appointed on May 16th. My impetus for forming this commission came from the vision in our system strategic plan to increase baccalaureate degrees awarded from $53,000 per year to $90,000 per year by 2025. To generate the additional 37,000 additional baccalaureate graduates, we may need more than 100,000 more students. Florida will have to consider a number of issues as to whether the pipeline of college-age students will be large enough to provide a sufficient number of college-ready students and the role to be played in baccalaureate degree production by the state colleges. The commission is being chaired by Ava Parker and includes Kathleen Shanahan, the chair of the State Board of Education, Representative Bill Proctor, who I'll introduce in a second, who is also the chancellor of Flagler College, Marshall Kreiser III, who's been here, I think Marshall's gone, but has been here for the past 2 days, the vice chair of the University of Florida Board and the chair of the Higher Education Coordinating Council. Susan Paragus, who is in the back. Susan, stand up. She is the president of the Council 100 and has agreed to take on the work of this commission and has been, it's over and above what's called for. And as well as Governor Kuntz and myself. The work of the commission is being, the staff work of the commission is being headed by the board's new chief academic officer, Dr. Jan Ignash. The commission is not scheduled to come back with recommendations until the summer of 2013 because we wanted to devote the necessary time to gather and study the data. We also wanted to consider the work of the other Board of Governors task forces, Governor Scott's Blue Ribbon Task Force, and the recommendations of the HEC. I'm sure that we have the right people at the table to tackle this task, and we will provide updates on the Commission's work at the future board meetings. Finally, we will soon announce the Online University Task Force. You may remember that our office received $300,000 in the 2012-13 budget to review the options related to online education. Nancy McKee and Vicki Shirley worked with the House staff to draft a request for proposals for a consultant to review the options available to expand the number of college graduates through the use of online education programs. Options will include leveraging existing resources to create online programs and creating an online university. An evaluation committee is currently reviewing the 7 responses that we received to the RFP. As soon as the consultant is chosen, I will name the members of the Online University Task Force who will bring recommendations to us in November. So we are busy. I have a few other introductions that I'd like to make. Is Dale Brill here? I'll introduce you later. Dale Brill has been kind enough to sit through the past 2 days. Is the president of the Florida Chamber Foundation and is the chair of the new of the Governor's Blue Ribbon Task Force on Higher Education, and we really appreciate his time with us. And of course, Marlene O'Toole, the chair of the House Higher Education Appropriations Committee, is here. Chair O'Toole, please stand up. Thank you for being here the past 2 days. And Alice Heflin, her staff director, is also here. Alice, where are you? Oh, there she is. Good timing. Thank you. So I have, I want to say something about Bill Proctor, and I'm going to go to the podium because I have a couple things to do up there. But I want Chairman Proctor to come with me. I know. In March, the board passed a resolution honoring Chairman Proctor. Dr. Proctor could not join us at that board meeting in March, but we are lucky to have him today. The Board of Governors would like to recognize you for more than 40 years of distinguished and timeless service to the advancement of quality education in the state of Florida as an educator, administrator, and thoughtful leader. You've served 30 years as the president of Flagler College and are now its chancellor. As a graduate of Florida State University, who earned 3 degrees in education, you've been dedicated to FSU. You served as an assistant football coach, assistant dean of men, research fellow, and interim athletic director at Florida State. During your 8 successful years in the Florida House of Representatives, you have been acknowledged by your colleagues as a leader on higher education policy and the calm voice of reason in the midst of significant changes in state higher education governance. You have always held quality as your compass, and you demonstrated that during this past session when you led both chambers in working on the preeminence bill to create a lasting and meaningful pathway to to excellence for the state universities. For these and many other reasons, I'm honored to present you with a resolution as a small token of our gratitude. Dr. Proctor, thank you. Inspiring. Say something inspiring.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. As he handed me the resolution, he said to say something inspiring. I don't know what I can say inspiring, except in the football vernacular, I'd say you blindsided me a little bit. But I am deeply grateful. It's been a real pleasure over the years to work with the Board of Regents at one time and now with the Board of Governors, and I'm certainly willing to do anything I can to be of help to you. So I'm very grateful for this, and thank you so much.
I'm going to stay up here for a second because we have another resolution that's been prepared from our colleague and good friend Frank Martin. And Frank, come up here and stand next to me. Frank, in your 6 years on the board, you made significant contributions to committees from academic and student affairs to facilities. But it was your work as chair of the Strategic Planning Committee that will have the most long-lasting impact. You led the board's effort to develop one of the most advanced accountability systems for higher education in the country. During your time leading the board's strategic planning efforts, we adopted a new 2025 strategic plan, implemented the university work plans, and developed a streamlined annual accountability report. Our current three-pronged approach to accountability has been described as the way to do accountability. It's fitting that you would come to this board meeting when we are considering the university work plans. This board, the universities, the system, and the state owe you a debt of gratitude for our accountability process. On behalf of everyone, it's my privilege to present you with this small token of appreciation, which is a resolution from this Board of Governors thanking you for your hard work. Frank?
Thank you very much. It has indeed been a pleasure to have served on the board for 6 years. I really did not know what I was getting myself into when I accepted the challenge, but once attending the second meeting and making the decision to support the two medical schools, I felt was one of the most important activities that I was involved in very early on, but also the fact of the strategic planning process, which I really had a passion for, and I think that as a result, the students of the state will be best served going forward by re-energizing the strategic planning process. So again, it's been a pleasure. Feels good being on this side. And looking at all you guys look great. Thank you very much.
I want to do something a little different. This is the last meeting for Rick Yost, and he is going off the board, and Dr. Chopra is going to replace him, and he's a wonderful replacement. But I don't recall enjoying anyone more than I've enjoyed Rick Yost the last 2 years. So there's a resolution in front of you all, and could I have a motion to approve a resolution that I'll soon read, thanking Rick Yost for his wonderful service for the past year.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Rick, come on up here. And I'm going to ask Dr. Chopra to come up as well. The resolution says, whereas Dr. Rick Yost has provided distinguished and dedicated service to the State University of Florida as a faculty representative on the Board of Governors from 2010 to 2012, and Dr. Yost has been an effective member of this board and a tenacious and unwavering advocate for the perspectives of the faculty who serve within the system. He has used his position to encourage discussion and interest in the issues affecting and shaping the academic enterprise of the system. Whereas during his tenure on the board, Dr. Yost served as a member of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, Strategic Planning Committee, and the Facilities Committee, and as an engaged member of those committees, he weighed in on complex policy considerations, including the review of proposals for new programs, campuses, and institutions. Be resolved that the members of the Board of Governors meeting at the Live Oak Center for Health Commons at the University of Central Florida on this 21st day of June 2002 do hereby commend Dr. Rick Yost for his invaluable contributions to the Board of Governors and the state university system, and to extend him all the best wishes, and be it further resolved that the resolution be presented to Dr. Yost as a small token of the board's appreciation and thanks. Rick, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Advisory Council of Faculty Senate, it is my pleasure to present a framed copy of an ACFS resolution commending Professor Yost for his service on the Board of Governors. I will not read the entire resolution. Please allow me to read a portion of it. Whereas Professor Yost brought to the ACFS his strong commitment to the importance of a collegial system of shared academic governance and provided invaluable input to the BOG from a faculty perspective. And whereas Professor Yost brought his independent judgment, knowledge, ideas, and considerable wisdom to the ACFS and BOG to promote and strengthen the public system of higher education in the state of Florida, now therefore be it resolved that the Advisory Council of Faculty Senates does hereby recognize and commend Rick Yost for his manifold contributions to the state university system of Florida.
So, you know, it's always dangerous to have a professor at the lectern because we only think in terms of units of 50 minutes, right? All I would like to say is that I have truly enjoyed my time on the board. I thank all of you around the table for your passion and your commitment to the education of the young people of Florida. And as much as I will miss being here, I know that the chair will be in good hands with Manoj Chopra taking over, and I know that you all will continue doing the very best for education. And for all of you out here who support the university system as well, thank you for being here as well.
I would also like a motion from the board for the appropriate motion thanking Governor Chris Corr, who's left us since the last meeting and gone to the University of Board of Trustees. Thank him for his hard work, especially in the Strategic Planning Committee and the development of the university work plans. So if I could have an appropriate motion to pass a resolution thanking Governor Corr, I'd appreciate it.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Before I turn it over to the Chancellor, I need approvals of the Board of Governors, the minutes of the Board of Governors retreat of March 2021.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I need approval of the minutes of the Board of Governors March 22nd meeting.
So moved.
Second? Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I need
Aye.
approval of the Board of Governors April 17, 2012 minutes that are in your package. May I have a
So
motion?
moved.
Second? Okay, we got to participate, guys. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. We got a busy day, Chancellor?
Just a quick thank you to the University of Central Florida. It's already been done, but thank you again, Mr. President. These things are very complicated, and as always, my staff, working with your staff, always astound me as to how smoothly the thing comes off at the end of the day, and we really appreciate what you guys do down here. It's fantastic. I also want to thank our special guests for coming out, and to say to our new board members, I billed this their first meeting as the best orientation any new board member could ever have on the state university system, and I hope we haven't let you down in that regard. The work plans, and thank you to the universities, were extremely well done, and the presentations likewise, and we thank you all for that. And just lastly to say, I had the good fortune to be invited to testify before the the Governor's Blue Ribbon Task Force on behalf of the State University System and on behalf of the Higher Ed Coordinating Council, since I was going to be there anyway. So I had some good questions, and thank Chair Brill for the invitation to represent all of you at their first meeting. So thank you very much, and we'll get on with the rest of the agenda.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the board operating procedures. Vicki Shirley, our general counsel.
Thank you, Governor Coulson. Request permission to remain seated.
Yes.
Thank you. In October of 2003, this board adopted a minimum compilation of operating procedures that addressed primarily elections and committees, along with the board's authority under the Constitution. As this board has progressed in its development as an organization, we recognize the need for a more robust compendium of operating procedures to codify the board's existing practices and also to be consistent with Florida's open meeting laws. We, as staff, worked with former Chair Parker and with Chair Coulson on this set of operating procedures that's in your packet, and what we ask today is for approval of those operating procedures. They cover corporate name, authority and responsibility, board membership as set out in the Constitution, the officers of the board, the chair, the elections. The elections, as you recall, are going to be held in November of each odd-numbered year, and each chair and vice chair serve for a term of 2 years and may be re-elected for a subsequent term. It also covers the responsibilities of the chair, the vice chair, the corporate secretary, and the chancellor. And it covers meetings, regular, special, and emergency, covers use of technology, the agenda, quorum and voting, and appearances before the board. And that's Section H of Article 5, and I call that to your attention because it's a little bit different than what we've done in the past. There have been, the last 2 legislative sessions, bills before the legislature to allow public appearances at public boards and commissions. There was a court decision about 3 years ago that held the public, under the Open Meetings Law, doesn't have a right to address a public entity unless that entity has adopted procedures. So in Section H, what we've attempted to do is strike a reasonable balance to allow individuals or entities to request permission to appear before the board to address a topic within the board's jurisdiction. They do so by filing requests with the chair, who then in consultation with the chancellor determine if that request will be granted and when it will be agended. So that's a little variance from what we've done in the past. The next article, Article 6, addresses the committees. Quorum, their standing committees are all outlined along with their duties and responsibilities. And finally, we have a conflict of interest provision which requires adherence with the Code of Ethics for Public Officers, but we already have a separate conflict of interest regulation in place that deals more in depth with that. Finally, Article 8 addresses amendment or suspension of these procedures, and it would require a 2/3 vote of the board to amend the procedures or to suspend the procedures during a particular meeting. So we ask for a motion to approve the board's operating procedures.
You all have had these. I assume you've been briefed on them in all your briefings. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any discussion on them? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Governor Rood, strategic planning.
Thank you. Over the last 2 days, as all of you know, the Strategic Planning Committee met, and after receiving presentations from each of the university, we had a rather in-depth discussion on their work plan. I should mention that the purpose of the action that we took dealt only with the current year's work plan, and we agreed that we would take up in September the future year aspect of those plans. During this process, we passed for each university, with the exception of FAMU, the following resolution. Let me get to that here. With the exception of the 2012-13 tuition differential request and capital improvement request, which will be the purview of the Board of Governors Budget and Finance Committee, I approve that portion of the university's work plan associated with the 2012-2013 academic year. With respect to FAMU, we added at the end of that motion that I just read The university, what's your writing here?
That, the work plan.
Oh, yeah,
for the
that's right.
university.
The university work plan is accepted contingent upon their agreement to provide additional information on its graduation retention improvement plan and an analysis of the financial aid/student debt at the September meeting of the Board of Governors. And, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask if the full board would accept those motions.
Okay. We have a second for the work, for the motion from the chair of the Strategic Planning Committee.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, just very quickly, before we close out the issue of work plan, at least for this minute, as you've noted, these are living documents, and we are going to be working with the universities, but I also want to make this offer available to anybody at this table. If there are things that you found deficient in the work plan template after having gone through this exercise, please let us know. If there's information you think that is too much, let us know. We want to make sure that if we need to refine this on an annual basis to a degree, we're always trying to make it a better template to use so that it is better for the universities, better for the board and the Board of Trustees. So please, we'd love to have your input on this, especially now that you've just gone through this process. And we'll be working with the universities on the same kind of a debrief.
Well, having said that, I would like to have, I'd like to track student-faculty
I didn't
ratio.
really mean that, Mr. Chairman. That was a gratuitous comment.
I would like to track student-faculty ratio, which is not tracked in the, but we've talked about a lot, average class size. And I don't know how to do this, but to track how many of our students are being taught by tenure and tenure-track faculty versus full-time instructors versus adjuncts, because I think that will help us look at, what's the quality of the product we're providing our kids. So those three things, for next year, of the list of suggestions, those are just to be put in the pot for me. Anything further? Governor Carter. Oh, Governor Carter.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I don't know how we would put it in there, maybe as a note or so. But if there's some way for us to look at some of these students that eventually graduate, I know we look at first time, but some folks may not graduate in 6 years, maybe 7 years. But I mean, is there some kind of way we can legitimately track that?
For those who don't graduate, I'm sorry.
That's 7 or 8 year graduation.
Yeah, I mean, they're
beyond 6 years.
I mean, I know people that actually do that. One is. I don't want to call his name, but it's one of my offspring. But I do know that students eventually graduate after 3 different institutions, or 4 in this case.
We'll be glad to do that and see if we can come up with some kind of a reliable mechanism to do it. It gets probably, and I'd love to hear from the presidents, it probably gets a little harder to track the longer you go, especially if there's broken service in there somewhere. But we'll be glad to go back and see what we can do.
I don't want to do it a whole scale, but I do think that sometimes, I mean, I'm just giving you anecdotal information, not just for me personally, but also from some of the kids that I've talked to, both in the congregation as well as some kids in different areas. Sometimes, pregnancy or, mom having cancer or something.
Mononucleosis.
Mononucleosis, yeah.
Recurring mononucleosis.
There's Joe.
But eventually they do graduate, and I'm just trying to, is there some way to track that? I don't know if they ever do, but I would like for us to do that if possible.
Governor Perez.
Along those lines, a lot of the conversation yesterday, particularly with our North Florida and West Florida and others, were those transfer students. I don't know if there is a way to sort of track the in-state transfer students from one of our undergraduate institutions to another one, but it would certainly be an interesting fact point to know that we're keeping them in the system and they are finishing in the system.
Very much would.
Got it. All right. Governor, do you have anything further in strategic planning? No. Thank you very much. Governor Tripp, Academic Affairs.
Thank you. 1 second to get to it. The following actions were discussed and approved during the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and are included on the board consent agenda for final approval. The consent agenda also includes one item returning for final approval from the March 2012 committee meeting. A PhD in Hospitality Management, CIP 52.0901, University of Central Florida. B, PhD in Applied Behavior Analysis, CIP 42.2814, University of South Florida. C, Consolidation of Graduate Education Programs into Curriculum and Instruction, CIP 13.0301, Florida State University. This action will terminate 9 existing doctorates listed in the agenda item and create a new doctorate program with multiple majors. D, request for exception to 120 credit hours to degree, Bachelor of Music Education, CIP code 13.1312, Florida Gulf Coast University. E, request for limited access status, Bachelor of Music Education, CIP code 13.1312, Florida Gulf Coast University. F, request for exception to 120 credit hours to degree, BS in Biology, Medical Sciences track, CIP code 26.0101, University of North Florida. G, request for exception limited access status, BS in Biology, Medical Sciences track, CIP code 26.0101, University of North Florida. H, request for limited access status, BS in Global Business, CIP code 52.1101, University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. That was H. I, termination of Academic Infrastructure Support Organization status for the Florida Center for Library Automation. J, factors for the Technology Performance Funding Pilot. Mr. Chairman, I move approval of these 10 items on the consent agenda for the Academic and Student Affairs Committee.
Second. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Anything further, Governor Tripp?
Nothing further. Sorry,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Governor Parker, Audit and Compliance Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. See, Derry, walking to the mic. Okay. We were all here, I guess, when we received the information. I'd just like to report out that we did get an update from Florida A&M regarding their actions with the whistleblower complaint that was received through our office. And then we also received information from Derry, our Inspector General, regarding different updates that we're covering in the office. I think there's one action item, and I want to make sure that I'm looking to my left, Mr. Chairman, and to Vicki. There is one action item that I think we took that should come to the board, but I'm not sure if it comes to the board this meeting or next meeting, or whether you have a preference on that, Mr. Chairman. I've forgotten the order. My question is, the committee voted out an issue, and my question is whether it would come before the full board at this meeting or at the next meeting. And it's more of a policy.
I think this is just for approval of the changes to the charter, and that should be voted on today.
Okay, good. So the only matter I have for the full boards as an action item, Mr. Chairman, is the approval of and I submitted as a form of motion, I move the approval of the changes to the Audit and Compliance Committee charter that was voted out by the board.
Second.
By the committee.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Anything further?
No, sir.
Governor Beard, Facilities Report.
Mr. Chairman, we approved 3 bond resolutions and 1 amendment to an agreement between the City of Tallahassee, Leon County, and Florida State University. And if you'd like, I can make a motion for each one. I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution of the Board of Governors authorizing the issuance of debt by Florida Atlantic University Financing Corporation to finance the construction of a student residence facility on the Boca Raton campus of Florida Atlantic University.
You have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I would like to make a resolution. I would like to make a recommendation for a resolution of the Board of Governors requesting the Division of Bond Finance of the State Board of Administration to issue revenue bonds on behalf of the University of Florida to finance the expansion of the J. Wayne Ritz Union on the main campus of the University of Florida.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
I would like to make a motion for the resolution of the Board of Governors authorizing the issuance of bonds by the FSU Financial Assistance, Inc. to finance the construction of a multi-purpose indoor athletic facility and related improvements on the main campus of Florida State University.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I would
Motion
like to make a motion for the amendment to the agreement between the City of Tallahassee, Leon County, Florida, Florida State University, and the Board of Governors related to the Tallahassee-Leon County Civic Center Authority.
Second.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second.
There does need to be a minor point.
As he
wrong.
voted, I was going to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Okay. I understand that. Okay, we have a motion and a second. No discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
That is my
Is that
report.
enough? Yeah, I don't think.
The reason is the board is being asked to approve the assumption of the debt that FSU will be assuming, and the loan is held by SunTrust, of which Governor Kuntz is CEO.
Yeah.
So what I've asked Governor Kuntz to do is get with me and file a memorandum of voting conflict within 15 days of this meeting.
Yeah, I'm just trying to err on the side of cautious, that since we have a transaction, an existing transaction, just to not participate in this discussion.
Great. Thank you. Governor Beard, that it?
That's all. That's all. The only action items, and I'd like to just thank Judy Bentz for chairing our facilities task force, and she's doing a great job. Thank you.
We all thank President Bentz.
We're going to figure it out.
Yeah. Governor Hussaini, trustee nominating.
Mr. Chairman, our committee met this morning, and we have two appointments to bring it to the board for final approval. One is on FAMU. I make a motion to approve Cleve Warren to become a trustee of FAMU, subject to orientation.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, we also have for New College a new trustee, George Esquestos, and I make a motion to approve as a trustee to Board of New College, subject to orientation.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Since you have the microphone, you want to give us an update, since I'm going to try to restrict your access to the microphone during the rest of the meeting.
Yes.
You want to give us an update on the reverter clause in the Polytech?
Yes, sir. I am very happy to report to you, as I mentioned in the meeting we had, a telephonic board meeting, that there was a major problem with the reverter clause that was requesting by Williams family to be put back on the property that the new Polytech University is going to be on. We've negotiated hard, and I'm happy to report that there will be no reverter clause. And Mr. Charlie Gray was a big help to us on trying to convince the owners that to take the reverter clause off, and also some changes that help the Polytech University to do additional things. We're also working our appointments to the board. We want to appoint to the Board of trustees as soon as possible, working with the governor's office, trying to come up with great 11 board members that to get the university moving forward. So that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. So now that takes us to budget and finance. Let me ask the board. We're going to start budget and finance unless somebody wants to take a 5-minute break, and otherwise let's go forward. And in a half hour, 45 minutes, if we'll still be discussing it. We'll break in the midst and take a break. So, Governor Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Budget and Finance Committee met this morning. First thing I'd like to do is offer a motion to approve Resolution 7.003, fees, fines, and penalties, and Regulation 7.002, tuition and fee assessment, collection, accounting, and remittance. We amended those regulations for notice and noticed that on the April 17th conference call. They've been published. We've received no comment, and they're now ready for final approval. So I move both of those regulations.
We have a motion. Do we have a second on those?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next up is the committee met this morning. Additionally, consider the capital improvement fee requests submitted by the various universities. 9 universities requested a $2 per credit hour fee increase. New College of Florida submitted a $1.38 per credit hour increase, and FSU did not submit an increase request for the Capital Improvement Trust Fund, or the Capital Improvement Fee. I'm sorry, I'm thinking in the 80s. The committee met, considered those requests, and approved all of the capital improvement fee requests as requested by the university. Each university, so on behalf of the committee, Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the capital improvement fee as requested by the universities.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I wish to be heard if possible on this issue. And as it relates to the following issue, I just make my comments now, if that's appropriate.
Yes, sir.
Okay, first of all, I know that all the members of the Board of Governors don't know me, but I have served on a collegial board before, and I've made multiple multi-billion-dollar votes before. But I wanted to kind of lay some things out in terms of where I'm coming from. First of all, I'm going to be voting no on this issue, and I'll be voting no on the differential fee, tuition proposals as well. And here's why. This is not the year. This is not the year. The current economic trends in this country are just too... Just when we thought we were on the verge of pulling out, on yesterday, Chairman Bernanke announced another $250 million purchase of treasuries. And he said that might not even be enough. He says unemployment is too high. The fact that they thought that there would be a growth is 0.5% or greater lower than what they had anticipated being. And the thing about it is that we talk about nice little charts and graphs and pictures and things of that nature. But the bottom line is everything we talk about, there's a human being. Students are human beings. And folks are just, they're finding it tough. So, I mean, you look at it's not this year. It may be better next year, but not this year. Look at our graduation rates. You know, I sat here through all of the presentations. No one's hitting a home run. I mean, we're doing good, but, you know, no one's hitting a home run. Look at I don't think that we should be breaking the backs of students to try and improve a situation that is a longer-term solution. We're talking about for this year. Next year may be different, but for this year, I say, you know, not this year. So I'll be voting no on this, as well as no for my recommendation for a percentage increase for the tuition to be 0. And those are my reasons for that. I think it's the wrong time. I think it sends the wrong message. I think it may not win any friends in this room, but I think a lot of people out there, moms and dads and students that are working 2 and 3 jobs or serving as waitresses or whatever the case may be, trying to make it through, now is not the time. You've had, you know, for the last 3 years in a row, you have 15% increase in tuition, got these fees going on top of that. It's tough for people out there. And the way I'm feeling right now, and based upon what I've seen and what I've heard and knowing what I know about the economy, you overlay that with the fact that some of these folks that are coming back to school are older folks. Nothing wrong with being old, but you have some of our more senior type students that are coming back. Some people could have gotten laid off from a job or may not have a job, so I got to go back to school and learn something. A lot of our returning vets. One thing that in the end of 2010, we had, this is a different kind of war that we've been fighting since we've been in the Gulf. It's been fought primarily by a lot of part-time soldiers, our citizen soldiers, National Guard, Reserve. We had, at the end of 2010, we had 3,000 of our troops come back to the state of Florida, and a 40% unemployment rate for them. So I know that some people say, well, Matt, when veterans go to college, they get a GI Bill. Well, the GI Bill may not come on time. I understand that the universities will say, we've got a plan for that. When the GI Bill doesn't come on time, we will give them a deferment. But what about the returning soldiers that have families? The landlord's not going to give you a deferment. Publix, no disrespect to Publix, but the grocery store is not going to give you a deferment. So I think, I think we need to look at this in the totality of the circumstances. Now is not the time. This is not the year. So that's where I'm coming from, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Carter. I appreciate your remarks. Other comments? We're on the fee issue. Yes, sir. Governor Webb.
I would just like to offer an alternative perspective on the matter. And coming from my university as well as the universities of all the student body presidents that I represent, I had the opportunity to have all the student body presidents here on Monday, and we discussed all the issues that would be coming before the Board of Governors, including this one, and including the ones that are very relevant to us. And I just want to emphasize again that we saw these things, and we all discussed these, and I discussed this in our CITF committee meeting as an investment in our universities. And while this might not be the perfect timing, sometimes we felt that in order to see we think this would yield the proper return on that investment. And so this is more so us as students wanting and specifically designing these things, coming on campus and using this disbursement to enhance our education, really looking to the future for our own education for the ones that are following after us. So that's kind of the perspective we were coming from, really looking at this as an investment and seeing a positive gain or return on that investment. So,
thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Governor Tripp.
Just quickly, I think there's a time when we can seriously look at this. I think our funding continues to be hodgepodge. We don't have a real long-term plan. We haven't sufficiently explored the need to see what the size of the university system ought to be versus the state college system. We talk about extravagant growth plans. Some of our universities indicate no problems with faculty. Others indicate the Great Depression in faculty. I think that this board is probably presented with a time when what we should do is try to decide once and for all what it is our university system should look like, how it is we believe it can be funded in the future, whether that be from the legislature or whether it be from tuition. And once we come to agreement on that, we then go forward with that mechanism of funding. But each year, it turns into not a realistic enough approach to where we're trying to be. And it's for that reason that I really struggle to continue to approve these differential tuitions. I find it interesting that our elected officials, they determined that this wasn't the year to raise base tuition. Now, I know that they had a lot of discussion about that, and their decision was, apparently, this is not the time or the place to raise base tuition, which they hold dear. So if they didn't think it was appropriate to raise base tuition, if they didn't believe that the system couldn't survive another year or so without that raise, then I question why we think we have so much more information that we should raise differential tuition. Thank you.
I would ask that we focus on, unless it's going to make unnecessary a speech later on, that we focus on the fee issue right now.
Mr. Chairman, this will be only about the fee. The same thing that others have said is just that it's a difficult year for giving, as we have been giving up. But I'm also a believer of the students' causes. I'm also a believer of, what their needs are. What I am suggesting is a compromise, and that is, instead of giving them $2 this year, giving them $1 this year, and then next year give them another $1, that'd be the $2, and going forward. So at least there is something in the middle that can get it started, and then next year, go to full dollars. It's going to take time to get the plans done, to get engineering done, to get architecture done, and it'll be 12 months to get there and get it started. So if you start with $1 now, and next year give them another $1, I think that's a pretty good compromise.
Governor Kuntz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just because we're allowed to raise fees doesn't mean we should jump in and go all the way to where we're allowed to. So we haven't raised this fee in many years. Maybe that was a mistake, but to go to the maximum allowed, I think is short-sighted. And to Governor Carter's point, now is not the year to go to the maximum of what we're allowed to do on fees, when many of the presidents have indicated that some of what they propose could be deferred. So I would wholeheartedly support Governor Hussaini in suggesting a more moderate approach to this would be appropriate.
Okay. Governor Perez wanted to.
Mr. Chair, I want to make sure I reported out the motion, but I did not give a lot of the history, and I know that most of the committee was here for the Budget Committee meeting, but raising this capital improvement fee has been on the board's legislative agenda for the last 5 out of the last 6 years. The fee has not been raised in 20 years in the state. The students control the committee that sets the fee and chooses the projects. It is a per credit hour fee. So we're talking about this proposal from these universities is a $2 per credit hour fee. A full-time student is 15 hours a semester, 30 hours in a year. It is a $60 issue that we are talking about. I understand if we want to have these dialogues about the tuition, but these are fees that students have chosen to impose upon themselves through their student committees to build buildings which they're investing in the future for their fellow students because they've benefited from the investments of prior students in the past. I don't think this one is that controversial. So I just wanted to make sure we understood we're talking about $2 per credit hour, and we're talking about putting money into a fund which ultimately will be bonded against to build student buildings for the benefit of students, chosen by students with a fee amount selected by students.
Governor Rood?
I don't know why we wasted our time making this a legislative priority for the last 3 years that I've been on. I mean, everybody was in unanimous agreement. We needed this. There were needs. We saw the PICO dollars diminishing. We supported this. We supported this to create a stronger sense of community or university life, to get our students, to get them to stay in the university, to focus on their degree as close to 4 years as possible. All these things, what we were talking about. And now, for some reason, we're more concerned about, and I'm concerned about the taxpayers too. I'm a taxpayer. But I look at my fiduciary responsibility is doing things that are going to make our system as efficient and as good as possible, and that means getting students out. And if the students are saying to create the sense of community, we want to invest in a center, a this or a that, which is what has been going on in our system since it was formed. So I don't know when this became controversial. I'm a little confused by this, but I either say, I don't like splitting the baby. I either say let's do it or let's forget this whole concept. If we're going to say we're going to put the taxpayers, make them the priority, which may be the right thing to do, then let's make them a priority and let's just say we're not going to fund this thing and send a clear signal to the universities, we're not going to invest in infrastructure, do what you got to do. So I would say let's just do one or the other and move on. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. If there's nothing, I don't want to cut off discussion.
Please restate the motion again? Please restate it.
The motion is to
before we start to
approve.
vote.
The motion is to approve the fees that were for the
It's a capital improvement
fee that was approved by the budget committee for all the universities except for FSU, and the fee at what one university was
New College of Florida is $1.38, $9 or $2, and FSU did not increase their fee.
So do we need a motion or a second? I seconded if the motion was already approved.
No, we have a motion and a second. So I'm going to, Dr. Yost.
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, the students have asked for this. The students pick how to use this money. Why do we tell the students, sorry, you've asked for this and we're not going to give it to you? That makes no sense to me. I think the students have asked for this. They're the ones who are going to pay for it. Let's move on. Let's vote on this positively and get on with the
Call the question. Call the question. Come on. Let's, Minoka, if you could take the roll.
You could probably do that.
Chair Colson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hussaini,
No.
Governor Beard,
Yes.
Governor Carter,
No.
Governor Caruncho, Governor Frost,
Yes.
thank you, Governor Kuntz,
No.
Governor Parker,
Yes.
Governor Perez,
Yes.
Governor Rude,
Yes.
Governor Temple,
Yes.
Governor Tripp,
Yes.
Governor Webster,
No.
Governor Watley,
Yes.
Governor Yost.
Yes.
So we have 1, 2,
It's 11-4.
11 to 4.
The motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next, the Budget and Finance Committee took up the question of tuition differential increase submitted by each university to be effective for the fall 2012 term. University of Florida requested a 9% increase, University of South Florida an 11% increase, Florida Gulf Coast University requested a 14% increase, and all others were at 15%. Mr. Chair, at the committee meeting, the committee passed a motion to approve all of the tuition differential increases as requested by those universities. At that point in time, Mr. Chair, you determined that you would like at this meeting to take each university up on an individual basis. So if it's all right with you, Mr. Chair, I've got a brief presentation before each university, and then we can take them up one at a time as you requested. But I will be making a motion on behalf of the committee for the amount each university recommends to start the conversation.
Okay, so make your motion on you.
The first, and what we had planned to do in committee, and the slides are in order, was to take them up in the order of their university work plan presentation.
No, I agree with that. But you're going to make you have your motion for the
first university, and then I just wanted to report out what the vote was at that university, and then we have a slide for each university and their request.
Okay. The way I'd like to do this, I mean, the committee voted, I would like to have some general discussion before we go through each university.
As you wish.
And so this is going to be a challenge for how we as a board tackle this issue. And so, and then I'll come back to you for your motion.
You're driving.
I think it's important that we do this on an individual basis, but I also think it's important that we have an opportunity to have a lot of dialogue on this before we tackle it, university by university. And I want to see if there's a consensus that can be reached at some place, and there may not be. It may be that there is no consensus can be reached. Governor Carter's already said he's at 0. Well, that's not going to get a consensus. I want to throw it open for some discussion about it, because we have people who weren't on the Budget and Finance Committee who didn't have an opportunity to talk, and I'd like those people to have a chance to talk about where we are and and see if there's a place that we can all get to. Governor Parker.
I know I was on the committee, but I would like to say generally, not repeat myself because we were all here together, but I would like to have some dialogue, Mr. Chairman, about the direction that we're moving in and kind of get a sense for the board's feeling about that. I think that it's clear that we are moving in a direction where philosophically we believe that families should contribute more to the cost of higher education in the state of Florida. I'm comfortable with that. I think that that's reasonable. I certainly think that, I may not, I think there are different ways to approach it, but conceptually, I think that, based upon where we are as a state financially and the economic challenges that we have and our desire for quality, I think it's very reasonable for us to at least ask for some input from our families. And I just would like to get the board's feeling about that so I can that helps me in my thinking about how we proceed with the individual votes for the universities.
Governor Yost.
Just two observations. First is a news report came out yesterday with quotes from you, Chair Colson, in this Institute for Competitive Workforce report card on the 50 states university systems. Florida was the only state to receive an A for both student access and success. I think that's interesting, and perhaps even more interesting is that in the cost effectiveness and efficiency category, the average cost to complete a degree at a 4-year public university in Florida is $46,000, the lowest in the country. I think we have to think about that. And then the only other comment I would make is, as I'm looking at these requests, I try and recall the statute that created differential tuition, which said that money was to be used for 30% for need-based financial aid, which we need, and to enhance and improve undergraduate education. And to the extent that the proposals we viewed from the universities were reasonable requests to support undergraduate education and improve that and to meet the needs of need-based financial aid, I think that we should do our best to support those requests.
Others. Governor Cruncher.
Thank you, Chairman. This is and I know in some of our conversations, this is a very difficult issue. I think the structure and the structure of our whole funding system, how it's come across in the last few years, kind of as a response to the recession, has not only failed our students, but as a state, we've kind of failed our universities as well. We have a system of funding that tells university presidents after the fact and after they've made commitments whether how much money they're gonna get. We put universities such as University of North Florida, some of the small ones, in a situation we heard yesterday because they had to use their reserves, and I have no problem with using reserves. I mean, it's a rainy day fund and it's raining, but in a situation where they might spend the next year trying to meet statutory reserves instead of figuring out how to be more efficient, how to improve quality, and doing the things that we need to do. You have universities who are research universities, FIU, UCF come to mind, but also answered the call to growth and to access that I think this board and the legislature has told them as well, even though there's been a freeze on growth in terms of the base funding by the legislature or what have you. So I feel their pain and what they're going through. On the other side of that, just to do both sides, and it's what I'm struggling with, we cannot sustain having this conversation every year and continuing to put the burden on our families. Thanks to you, Mr. Chairman, on the Blue Ribbon Task Force, along with President Delaney and Marlene O'Toole, who's here, and Chairman Proctor, and I really thank them and Chairman Brill for sitting through this, because I think it's going to inform and guide our conversation in our meeting Monday. And I suspect we'll spend most of the day talking about this, but we need to move very quickly, I think, to develop a more sustainable funding model statewide, as President Delaney and some others have said today, to make a decision proactively about how do we want to fund, how much money per student do we want to spend in the state of Florida based on what we want to achieve, and to make that decision that Governor Parker said, what percentage of that do we want families to pay for versus the state. and then to stick to that, and then also to give the flexibility to this board, who's a constitutional board, and is supposed to have the authority, and actually has the authority and the responsibility of overseeing and ensuring quality and efficiency and return on investment and all the things that we all believe in. You can't do that unless you also have authority over funding, because we need to move, in business, if you want something accomplished, you tie dollars to it. And unless we have the authority going forward, unless we give the predictability to the presidents at the universities, and we give authority to this board to tie dollars, and we can phase it in over 2 years, 3 years, whatever we think, but to tie dollars to the specific behavior that we want to incent, and to pay the universities that do those things, whether it's access or the metrics that we're talking about, to pay them more for doing those things, and hold others accountable where they don't do it. We're just going to be doing this dance for the foreseeable future, to the detriment of our university system, because you get past a certain point and there's no going back, and it'll take a decade or two to restore the damage done to them, and certainly to our students, because that concept that Governor Rood said yesterday with a student at I think it was FAMU, the specific example, not to pick on them, with ending up with a $30,000 non-dischargeable debt and no degree to start their life, as you said, is irresponsible. So again, I'm open. I'm kind of, my thinking is evolving on this, and we'll see where we get to it. But that's the frame within which I'm viewing it, at least.
Well, one of these moments here, we're going to start having to mentioning numbers, and so Governor Webster.
Thank you. I too am struggling right now. I'm struggling with the low key performance improvement metrics. I struggle with the first time in college graduation rates, especially those who do not graduate with a large debt. I struggle that there's been a 74% infusion of tuition during the recession period, and if we continue the rate that we're going with our tuition increases, my 6-year-old son will not be able to afford to go to a state university. We must really focus on improving our key metrics, affordability, efficiencies, and seeing return on investments.
Thank you. Governor Hussaini.
Mr. Chairman, too interesting, Governor Parker said about family being involved. I agree with her, and families have been involved. Families in the last 4 years paid 15% every year. This is the fifth year, which he'll put it at 74%. So the last 4 years, the families have been involved, and they have been paying the 15%. So the question is that, and also Governor Cranshaw brought up sustainability. How many more years? When and how? Sometimes the economy is just doing great. We should, and we could ask our taxpayers, our citizens of the state of Florida, look, we need to have greatness. Today, when the economy is down, when people will have kids that they have a hard time, a $5, a $10, and a $50, they all add on. And to give them a break, perhaps I like to have it at zero. I like to have it not to increase tuition, much. But also, when the legislators, did the budget, they gave, some of them say they did, some of them say they didn't. That based on, that they get the 15%. So it'll be a big surprise to the presidents, if they don't get their 15%. So, and we want them to be successful. Some of our smaller universities really are suffering, and we don't want them to go below required reserve. So that said, all that said, I am for compromise. I wanted to family do be involved. I also want us to show the families that we do care, that after 4 years of asking the families, at the worst of time, asking them for 15%, try to compromise with them at the lower number. I'm not suggesting we go to zero. I am not suggesting, Mr. Carter, just stay at zero. I think we should compromise. I think when I mentioned $1 this year and let's give them $1 next year, doesn't make much difference really. By the time you add on the number and you issue the bond, but we are hell-bent to approve and go on our life. And it's really easy for me to say, okay, let's just get another 15% and go on with our life. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to take any more time because I said this morning how I felt. So, assuming if the motion fails to get approved, then I will have a compromise to offer to the board
Well, I want to suggest that we get these compromises on the table, not for motion purposes. Okay, go ahead, Governor.
Asked a question, before we had lunch, that she'd like to know where we're coming from and why. And I think that's a fair question.
Right.
You all kind of know where I want to go, but I'm not sure you totally understand why. So I'd like to make a few comments to answer her question before we get into the nitty-gritty of university by university, if that's appropriate. Well, first of all, from the start of this board, which I've been on, we have, and I know we say it's not a goal, but we've had a goal of trying to get to the national average. And you saw the slide today. At the rate we're going, if this is all approved at 15, it's going to take us 10 years. So we're way behind schedule. Also, we're all biased, have a certain bias based on our own experience. And so I'm going to take a couple minutes here and just tell you. I mean, I went to University of Washington. I got a naval scholarship. I worked 3 nights a week as a professional musician. Took 21 hours a quarter. Never had any scholarship or asked for any other than the Navy, but I had to serve my time. And I never borrowed any money. So I got through that process. Spent my 4 years, 2 years on destroyers, 2 years on submarines. I had a couple of small kids and went back to Stanford Business School. I never asked for any scholarship money. I had enough money for 1 quarter. And we worked it out. My wife went to work, and so I never borrowed any money, and I never asked for any scholarship money. So do I have a bias? Probably. If you let's look at what the student is paying. I think that's a better way to approach this. Let's look at what the student is paying in the state of Florida. And ever since I've been here, particularly starting with FAU, which goes back quite a ways, and I know where Norman stands on this, and he's very consistent. We disagree, but I know where he stands. I've felt that there's an entitlement mentality in the state of Florida, based on my experience in other states. And if you look at where we stand, let's look at what the student pays. We're 45th tuition throughout the country, and we can't even get to 50, or we can't even get that, the midpoint for another 10 years at the rate we're going. And with Bright Futures and all of that, I mean, we're paying 30% less. Our students are paying 30% less than they are on the average throughout the country. So we're not putting a burden on our students. I think if there's any focus, and I know this is a sensitive issue, and you got to deal with the legislature, but I think the issue ought to be focused on Bright Futures. We got a bunch of kids going to school whose parents can afford to send them, and so let's attack that with the legislature and see if we can straighten that out, because that'll help everybody. And I have a lot of friends who have kids that are driving around in BMWs, and I say, well, what would you think if we took Bright Futures away from them, or we took the majority? And they say, fine. So I think our focus is wrong. Our students are not paying a whole lot. We still have an entitlement approach here, and we can't get out of the hole. And if we don't do something now, we may not get the opportunity to do it in the future. So,
thank you, Governor Tibble. Others? Governor Perez.
Mr. Chair, as long as we're giving our perspectives as to why we are where we are.
That's what you asked for.
That's what I meant.
Let me just be clear. We've been at this for 6 years. I've had the pleasure of chairing this committee for 5 years. We've lived these numbers for a long time. The governor came and spoke to us 2 days ago. And he said, I want to be number one in affordability. Trustee Yost just told you that according to an independent ranking, we are number one in affordability. He said, I want to be number one in efficiencies, and I want gains. Over the last 5 years, his message to us 2 days ago was the exact same message we've been giving our universities for the last 5 years. Over the last 5 years, the budget cuts from the legislature, and I got to be honest with you, I think the legislature is a great partner. I think they have got a really tough job. I think they've got tough decisions to make, and I think they do the absolute best they can. I'm not throwing them under the bus at all. But notwithstanding, the cuts that we've received from the legislature have indeed disproportionately transferred some of the revenue side to our hands to generate over the historic model. I agree. We've been wanting dedicated funding sources. We've been wanting reliability. We hoped when the Board of Governors was formed, we'd get lump sum awards to the Board of Governors so that then the Board of Governors could create expectations and dole out rewards and not having rewards. That's simply not where we are. That's not where we were. And it is a conversation worth having. There's all sorts of things we should be doing with the educational system, starting with reforming of Bright Futures and moving forward so that we can be able to give our universities the ability to plan and look forward and make decisions like a real business as opposed to being subject to a last 48-hour swath in a conference committee that costs them $300 million. It's impossible to run your businesses that way, but our universities have done it, and they've done it successfully, and they each have different missions. Why am I supportive of 15%? And remember, I mean, most of you know, I'm an old student body president. I hate tuition increases. I hate anything that puts an additional burden on the students. I do. But I go back to two things. Number one, particularly differential tuition. If we're going to raise tuition, this is the way to do it. 30% goes to need-based financial aid. The rest goes specifically where we want it to go in the classroom. I gave you slides during the budget committee meeting of all the classes that were saved, 1,200 classes alone at UCF. Saved, sections saved, so the kids can get their classes and graduate on time. President Barron said it yesterday, the biggest tuition increase is making a kid stay a fifth year. That's a tuition increase. Differential tuition goes right to the core of that problem. So do I like the idea? No. Do I think it's important and do we have to do it this time? Yeah, we do. And I'll tell you what, the legislature, number one, in their $300 million cut to us, which is a non-recurring cut, and I'll come back to that in a moment, put in the budget this 15%. We say the legislature hasn't told us what they want. I think they made it pretty darn clear when they said 15% differential tuition. I think they told us what they want. I think they told us the level of investment they're willing to make last year and we're willing to make. And I think we've worked together well. But let's be honest. That $300 million cut from last year, which is a non-recurring cut, which goes right back to our base next year, goes back to our base at the beginning of the legislative cycle. All that means is when the committee pulls up the budget, that $300 million is back in the budget to start the year. They didn't commit it will be there at the end of the year. They just said it will be there at the start of the year. So it's going back into base, but then it's subject to whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of theoretical issues that we need to be talking about. There's a lot of changes to our funding and our system and our mechanisms and our metrics that we need to be focused on. But when I was a kid, my dad said sometimes it's better to have a backbone than a wishbone. And I feel like we got a wishbone when we're going to talk about maybe we need to renegotiate this whole system before we provide the resources to those students that need it. Now, I showed you slides earlier in the day. Students under $40,000 are not paying a substantial amount of money for their education. Students under $60,000 are not paying a substantial amount of money for their education. The system, the Pell Grants, differential tuitions, Bright Future, eases the blow of what we're doing. Where we do harm them is if they can't graduate. 15 years ago, UCF was known as you can't finish because you couldn't get your classes. We got equity in funding, and all of a sudden, UCF, you can start graduating from. The worst thing we can do is not have adjunct professors, not have associate professors, and not have course sections so these students can't graduate. That's a tuition increase, half a year out of their life, a year out of their life, a year out of the workforce. Differential tuition goes right at the heart of the challenge that we're trying to deal with. And yes, we need to have conversations about state funding, dedicated funding, ongoing funding. But at the end of the day, when we look at these numbers and we talk about compromising maybe 12%, maybe 13%, I get back to the one other element that I think is so important and so unique about this board, and that is I trust our trustees. Our trustees look into all of those numbers and metrics that we put forth. We say, do these things, here's your goals, make these things happen, and our trustees are responsible for looking at those universities and holding those presidents accountable. Those trustees who live in the neighborhood, who shop in the grocery store, who walk through the grocery and they say, you raised tuition on my kid. They made the difficult decision to come to us, and this isn't an easy decision for anyone, and say, we need to do this thing because it's what the system needs, it's what the university needs, it's what we need so that our kids can continue to graduate. Is this easy? No. Is it fun? No. Is it political? Sure. But I go back to what my dad said. Sometimes you got to have a backbone, not a wishbone. And I'm going to support these things. I'm going to support them because our trustees have recommended them. I'm going to support them because we put metrics in place to monitor them next year. And I'm going to support them because for all of the same reasons that we say families are struggling, so is our state revenue. And I'm not expecting a windfall next year. I'm not expecting it. And I don't think we can continue to ask our universities to do less with less. We used to have a lot of money that we asked them to do more with more. We cut the heck out of them. We said do more with less. We're now at the point of saying do less with less, but don't make it so bad. That is not the state university system I want to be associated with. Just my thoughts. That's where I'm coming from, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman, it's Pat on the other end. Tico, I want to ditto what you just said. Personally, I've been through many degrees in private institutions, but as you all know, I've been part of the public arena for my whole life. Miami-Dade Public Schools, FIU boards, etc., etc. And Tico, you're right on. The students, the parents, the trustees, the presidents all want quality education. If we don't increase this tuition, which is specified for those who can't afford it, and quality education, especially on the undergraduate school level, why have we sat here for the last 2, 3, 4 years and discussed all of this? I think many people have strong opinions. There are many who are not able to afford it. Maybe they have to find another job. Maybe they have to find another bit of revenue. Maybe they have to find another way of completing their education. But the majority of the students want quality education, and we have just ripped $300 million out of that. So I can tell you, I am for not just the small amounts that they're all asking for, or some are asking for. I would personally go for 15% across the board for even those universities that didn't request anything or less amount. I am voting for a solid increase in differential tuition for all the universities. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor Rood.
Thank you. This is not easy, and when I serve on a board, I always look at what are my responsibilities, who am I serving, who do I represent, and there's conflicting, we're being pulled in different directions here, but I came on this board representing the system, not one university, not the parents, not one community, but the system. And when I look at the kind of system that I think we all want, and that includes the governor, an efficient system, and we were just recognized as such, a system that improves its graduation rates, a system that works towards more STEM classes, we've got a decision to make to support that type of system. And I believe the system that we have now and the direction the system is going, the success that we're experiencing is not sustainable. And I think that is the key. If it was sustainable at today's level, levels of funding, I would say leave it. In fact, let's work to even cut and cut and cut. But I honestly believe that we are riding somewhat on our reputation and that we are getting dangerously close to seeing our trends, or actually they're starting to change our trends. Instead of going upwards, they're leveling off and in some cases going down. So if I look at the system as my priority and where I have my responsibility, I'm going to be supportive of these fees. On the other hand, if I look at the parents and not inflicting pain on the students with this additional fee, then I would have to make another decision. And it hurts me. I looked at my 2 grandchildren. I was going to buy a prepaid, and the cost of a prepaid is ridiculous right now. But it's ridiculous because we in this state have made a decision that we are shifting some of that, more of the burden than we had in the past to the students and also obviously to the parents. But that's a reality of today's economic climate. But I think we each need to ask ourselves, it's $560 a year, I think, at the 15% level. Is that burden, and it is a burden, is that burden on the students that are paying, more than we're going to achieve to ensure that as a system, we're going to at least work at continuing to have the great reputation that we have across the country. I also wanted to comment on the concept of just splitting it. I mean, we can all feel better maybe if we just compromise in the middle, but I just think we need to say what is the right thing to do. And the right thing is either that we put the kids and the parents ahead of the system and vote this down, or we say we're going to put the system, and we think they can absorb that $560, and we put the system and the system's goals and the system's desire for efficiencies and higher graduation rates, we put that ahead, and we support this. And I don't see how cutting it in half does anything except say that we can't make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Governor Beard. Just a second. I'm going to let Governor Beard speak, then I'll come back to you, Governor Beard.
Yeah, in the committee meeting, I gave you all 7 or 8 points, and I don't, for the reasons why I was going to vote for the 15%, and I haven't changed my mind on those points, but I don't want to go back over them. But I thought it'd be interesting, like Mr. Temple said, to give you a little of my background. I was raised by a Marine. And he said, if you want to go to college, I'll pay your tuition, but you got to get the rest of it. And I wasn't a great student. I didn't have a whole bunch of other resources, so I worked. And it took a lot longer than 4 years. But I wanted to go to a great school, so I ended up going to Georgia Tech. And I worked the whole time. It took a little bit longer, but I got through it, and I got my degree, and I got my education, and it made a big difference in my life. I think I agree. We've become, this is not an entitlement. This is something that people have got to earn, this education, in my view, whether they've got the resources or not. And we went through a board meeting 4 or 5 times ago, and we proved that there are ways for people to create the resources to get their kids through school if they look at all the resources. So I don't think the legislature is going to give up any of the rights. I don't think this system is going to be easily changed. There are lawsuits in place right now trying to get that done. I think we're kidding ourselves. I just don't think the politics are in our favor. So I think that we've got to go up or down, and I'm going to vote for it, and I'm not going to vote for anything in between.
Governor Carter.
Mr. Chairman, out of respect for you, I wasn't going to say anything because you said if you say what you need to say at one time and be done with it, but if folks are going to continually say things, then I think turnabout is fair play. First of all, I was not on the budget committee, so some folks were on the budget committee, they had to say things 2 or 3 times and all like that. Secondly, is that I made my perspective, that's what I think. Yeah. I didn't attack anyone because they believe in the rate increase or believe in the tuition increase. No, I told you what I thought. And for anyone here to sit and to make implications about my character or what I'm doing just because I disagree with you, I think that's...
I don't think anybody...
That's the way I took it.
I know.
And that's the way it sounded.
What are you talking about, me?
Yeah, I assure you that everybody here has respect for everybody else's opinion.
And I was not talking about the taxpayers. I was talking about the students that pay tuition and the parents that pay tuitions and the tuition payers. And I was talking about it in the context of where I'm coming from the economy itself. And that's, I mean, we can disagree. We don't have to all agree, but certainly we can be agreeable in how we
and I assure you
carry out
that all the governors here respect each other's opinions. And we're going to all walk away from here no matter what this 8-7 vote turns out. We're respecting each other and enjoying each other. Governor Husseini.
Mr. Chairman, I do agree with you. I don't think that there was any meaning, trying to say, have a backbone, but, have a backbone, not a wishbone. I think that's just a thing. I don't think Governor Perez means anything by that. And I absolutely believe that that's a belief that he has, and I'm a believer of giving a message after 4 years doing 15%. Give a message to the parents. We're thinking of you. We think that we want to help, and we want to get a beginning of this is not sustainable. That having a 74% increase. So that's where the compromise comes. Because I don't think that universities are going to get killed if you trying to ask them for a few percent down and trying to help the parents a little bit. Give a message to the legislators that they need to look into this and come to the table. I do not think that it's unconscionable. And again, I think I've said my piece. And I have all the respect for all the board members on this board.
I'm going to turn this over to Governor Perez in a second, but I think I ought to say a few words about how I feel about this. I really think our university system is different than the other systems that are offering baccalaureate degrees in the state. Our colleges provide a less expensive alternative. A 2+2 is a significantly less expensive alternative than spending 4 years here. The statute says 15%. I'm confident that if it said 18%, we would have 9 universities asking for 18%. If it said 13%, we would have 9 universities asking for 13%. But I'm also confident that there's a need there for the 15%. And I view a year like this where we're dealing with how large a cut is going to be different than a year where you have a level-based funding and you're giving additional monies for new programs that might benefit a university. In that situation, I'm going to be much tougher because I'm going to look a lot more at these metrics and I'm going to say, I'm sorry, you're not getting more money with a 52% 6-year graduation rate. But I'm not so sure that when we have a year where we've cut your university's $300 million, that's the analysis. I think it's a different analysis in a year of major cuts than it would be in a year of balanced funding and additional money for new programs. So I don't see a compromise. I'm a listener here, and I don't see a compromise, and that's okay. And I think that's okay. It's the process is, I think, and the dialogue is good. And at the end of the day, we're going to have at the end of the day, no matter what happens, the universities are going to open in September, or in August. So it's just a question of we all might come out on different sides of what the quality will be and things of that nature. So having said that, I think we ought to start going through the universities one by one, which I think is the right thing to do. And I'm going to turn back to Governor Perez for the first university.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just give you the batting order. It is in the same order as the university presentations. So UCF will be first, followed by FIU, UWF, FSU, UF, USF, FAU, New College, FAMU, UNF, and batting cleanup is Florida Gulf Coast. So if we could, we'll start with UCF. Bear with me for a moment. Let's see, President Hitz back. I've got, I'm going to run through these slides real quick. I've got a slide for each university. I had actually contemplated having this conversation in the Budget Committee meeting. Let me get there, and while President Hitt joins us, let me just remind you, University of Central Florida is asking for a 15% tuition increase. It was passed with one no vote from their Board of Trustees, and their student voted yes on the 15% fee. And, okay, this is still the slideshow we went through this morning. I could linger on that page for a while, but I'll just have Everybody get a shot of that one? Okay. Let me just keep going then. Let me go back to that in case nobody saw it. We got there, right? Okay. All right. Let me just go, just keep moving here. And then each of these slides is exactly the same for each university once we get to it. Okay, so here is the UCF proposal. And yes, I have my pointer. The fall 2012 differential. Each slide has the same information. UCF is looking for a 15% increase. That becomes $19.24 additional per credit hour, $577.20 for annualized full-time enrolled 30 credit hour. That'll generate $19.8 million in revenue. It'll be used to hire, retain faculty, maintain and increase course sections, and other support activities. We asked them to also tell us what they did with last year's money, because differential tuition has its requirements. So in 2011-2012, the $24.2 million differential expenditures, they created, saved, or provided 1,733 course selections, 209 adjuncts and faculty, and 29 advisors. They also gave 6,745 need-based financial aid awards. The mean award was $939 out of the tuition differential, and as you can see, that $939 equates very favorably to the $577. So you can see how that works, which is why I said I like this way of raising tuition. You can also see each university's history will be on each graph. We've got their operating funds we've got the state funds in green and the tuition in blue, and you can see how the state funds have been over the last 5 years. And then we have a funding per FTE student for each university, because they will vary depending upon the enrollment numbers and how many students each university accepts, and if they've decided to shrink their undergraduate or grow, if they're a metropolitan university serving that mission, or a small or a research university. So University of Central Florida's current funding per FTE student is a total of $8,677. If last year, 2011-2012, $4,351 was tuition, $4,326 was state funding. That said, they are asking for a 15% differential tuition increase. Mr. Chair, on behalf of the Budget Committee, which approved the 15%, I move on behalf of the Budget Committee, 15% tuition differential increase for the University of Central Florida.
We have a motion and a second. Do we need additional discussion? Okay.
The only thing I'd ask, Mr. Chairman, that I'd be able to say is that I don't know if I was clear kind of where I was in the previous conversation, and that I am in favor of some type of differential increase. I'm not sure that, I think there is value in a more compromised lower number. So I just needed to make that clear, is that, I know right now the motion on the floor is to go to the full 15. While I support families contributing, I support the idea of the universities needing the additional revenue. I'm just at a different number. So I just wanted to make that clear.